All right, welcome back to Intro to Technology 1023. We're going to be talking about Flexbox and CSS Grid today. Generally speaking, as an overview, both of these are paradigms that have been, well, Flexbox been around for a while. CSS Grid is coming in. It doesn't look like it's going to replace Flexbox. It looks like both of these standards work pretty well together. When we're going through this, keep that in mind where both of these tools are probably going to stick around, it seems like. I don't see CSS Grid completely displacing Flexbox. So let's start with that. Flexbox, what is it? Well, it's a layout standard. It is based on containers, and then each one of those containers is an item, and each one of those items can be moved around like a flexible layout and orientation. So that's what is happening here. Now let's play this video to show you exactly what I mean. So the purple is the container, the blue are your flex items. So as the screen continues to shrink, the width that's available continues to shrink as well. And then if that item is too big for the container that it's in, it's going to flex down to the next row. Okay, like so. And as the screen gets bigger, the container gets wide enough to hold all three items, and then it becomes a single row once again. So the primary goal of Flexbox is to be mobilely responsive. So no matter how you have your device turned, oriented, how big it is, how small, doesn't really matter. The goal of Flexbox is to reorient your content through containers and rows. We'll get into that. Row comes from a library, but through containers and flex items, that it actually reorients itself for either a smart device, a smartphone, watches, anything with a screen. Essentially, you're going to have to account for it. Just depends on what software you're making. So the link down here is CSS Tricks. This is one of the websites that does a really good job of explaining what Flexbox is actually trying to do, and it's actually a little bit better than the docs themselves. So this is one of the things online that's actually better than the docs, one of the few. So this is pretty awesome. Yeah. So Flex Container is very similar to what we were talking about before with div containers and how you can move things around in modular fashions, like a basket that just holds a bunch of things. Very, very similar. And it actually comes from this paradigm right here where, okay, you actually have a flex box and you can move that flex box around. And that's generally what you want to do. So this Aprilia site here is using Plano Flexbox, which is awesome because I can actually show it instead of something like Bootstrap, which we might get into. Right here, display flex, bang, flex flow ends up being a row wrap. And then as we continue on here, you get more things like this where you can actually control it. So pay attention to where the text is and then where the image is. Okay. This is not a video. I think I have the video later. Okay, so keep that in mind. So we have flex items, Flexbox items. So if we go back to our original video here, container item 1. Okay, this is a flex item. The purple is the Flexbox container itself. All right. And here is how I made the example from the beginning. So container, flex, row, wrap. So these are the things that are actual, the Flexbox styles here. Okay, so if we come over here to container, it's getting applied here, and then it's getting applied here. So we have two different Flexbox containers. And then if we continue on, the Flexbox Children or the Flexbox items, okay? So we got container item here, background color of aqua, and then a bunch of other styling. Container item, container item, container item. Okay, so if we show you this video again, We have our container items. Notice that it's aqua. The background is purple, which is the container itself. And then it gives you this effect as we shrink the width. We can start collapsing our own content down the page so it actually fits on the width of the screen. Like so. Okay, here are a list of Flexbox container properties. Again, do not memorize these, just know that they're there. W3 is an excellent resource for this as well. Children properties, same statement, don't memorize these, know that they're there. CSS Grid. Okay, so remember when we were talking about tables, and that was a old paradigm of laying out content. Well, there has been a movement lately for this, which is CSS Grid. You take a very similar concept of tables. So you have rows and columns, and that splits everything up into little cells, and then you can specify how big something can be by cells. That's essentially what this is. The biggest difference between this and a table is that this is mobily responsive and it's also accessible. We won't get into the accessibility here, but essentially what this is allowing you to do is think like a table and then organize your content like a table and then readdress it as needed when you change layouts. So it's a fundamentally different paradigm from CSS or from Flexbox, but it is helpful, and I find myself using this quite a bit when I'm using custom components, just because it is a little bit easier to put things into little micro tables. And then you use Flexbox to control the element, and then that works out pretty well for most things. Occasionally it doesn't, but again, intro. Well, we got to get there. Okay, so here's your CSS grid example. We have our container, so we're all right, we're doing pretty good here. Display of grid template rows, grid template columns. Okay, so your grid template row is going to determine how many rows you are specifying. So we're saying, hey, repeat to 200 pixels. So that's going to be 200 pixels tall. Grid template columns is a repeat of 3 with 1 FR. We haven't gotten into fractional units yet. Just know that that is equal spacing throughout. Okay, fractional units. This allows the browser to size objects based on available width. So the formula here would be total width minus grid gaps divided by total fractional units. 1 FR would be in pixels. Okay, so this also means that fractional units are relative to other fractional units. So if we have 1 FR here and we're repeating it 3 times, we are dividing up the available screen space by a third. Not too complicated. All right. We can do something similar here. Where the repeat and what you're showing or what I'm showing here is identical in terms of CSS grid. All right. So the fractional unit example here is screen width 1920. So your typical 16 by 9 aspect ratio in a 1080p panel. So 1920 width, good gap of 100 pixels, number of column 3, total fractional units of 3. What is the value of 1 FR? Happens to be 573.3 repeating. Okay. And here is the full formula for that. So your screen width is 1920. All right, grid gap, 100 pixels, times the number of columns that you actually have, minus 1. All right, so this time it's going to be 200 pixels. And then divided by total fractional units. Okay, so this also means that if you have unequal fractional units, so if you want something, if we want a 2 by 5, right? And then, or a 3 by 5, and then a 1 FR, and then 1 FR. So that'd be 3 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. That means it's 3/5 for the bigger one, 1/5 for the smaller one, and 1/5 for the last smaller one. Okay. Oh, Here's a good example. All right, repeat to 1FR, and then the last one's going to be a 3FR. So it is the 3/5 example that I'm talking about here, just in reverse order. Ends up looking like this. All right, so that last bit there is 3/5. The first two is 1FR, or 1/5 of the available screen width. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. Media queries. So CSS Grid and Flexbox are very dependent on media queries. What this does, at this level at least, it allows you to take a, let me change the words on that. It allows you to monitor what the width of the device is. So if you end up changing it like on desktop for like a browser window or whatever device is actually accessing that data based on the width of the current viewport session, doesn't really matter how you describe it here, it'll deliver a particular CSS content based on that. So something like CSS Grid, where it has the ability to readdress content based on what you're actually asking of it, it does this through media queries. So if you want your header on, obviously the top of the page for your desktop, because that's the conceptual model that most people have, and then you want to move it to the bottom for mobile view, because that's increasingly becoming the conceptual model that people have, then you can do that with CSS Grid, but you're going to need a media query to say, hey, this is actually a mobile view, move the header to the bottom of the page. Okay, so highlighting down here, look at this, media screen and minimum width of 800 pixels. So minimum width is exactly what it sounds like. Only when it's 800 pixels or bigger, do this. Only when it's 1,000 pixels or bigger for width of the device, do this. Okay, so this becomes a desktop view, this becomes a tablet view, and then you can change what you're trying to do based on the width of the device. Okay, so the way this is formatted, we have mobile view first. So we're designing mobile first, and we're going to set those styles. And then for our tablet view, we're only going to reset the styles for tablet that we need to change, which happens to be the layout. So grid template rows changed from 200 pixels to 250. Columns changed from this layout to this layout. And the desktop went 50 pixels here, and then double here. Actually, double plus 50. Okay, so if we play this video, it shows you that media query, instead of using Flex Container, can accomplish something very similar, but it is a different paradigm. Okay, we're about to hit that breakpoint. And down. There we go. Notice that the layout changed. And then we're going to hit that second breakpoint. And now notice that it's 3/5 on the right edge, and then 1/5 on the other ones. And then once we stop here, we can actually go back up just to show you that it does indeed work the other way as well. And do be aware, when I actually made this video, I'm literally going down pixel by pixel. So no matter what device is requesting information, this is going to work. It might not be the best layout in the world, but it gets the point across. Okay, and now we're back up to desktop. All right, so that's going to do it for CSS Grid and Flexbox. Obviously, that was a fire hose worth of a presentation there, but much like everything else in technology, you're not going to understand this until you actually use it and make your own mistakes, and then extrapolate on the concepts that already exist. Because trying to do this in isolation is not how you're going to be addressing these concepts. You're going to be addressing them with other things to accomplish a goal. So with that said, for now, just understand these concepts in isolation. We will do another little example here to show you Flexbox and then the CSS Grid portion of it. And yeah, I will see you in that demonstration later. All right, welcome back. We're going to go over Flexbox, and we're going to be using that same file that we've been using up to this point. So where we left off at was the trek bike, road bike, and then we had our different sections here. We rounded off our corners, and we have some blue text over here. So I'm going to pull this back up for the CSS file. I'm going to go over this real quick. Headers, bike container, and then we have trek container down here. Okay, so for this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually not going to do a mobile view just because I don't expect you guys to do it for intro to technology. When we get to intro to web, yes, most definitely I'm going to expect you to be able to do that. With that said, so where to start? Where to start? Now, as I said before, Flexbox is based on a series of containers and flex items. Now, where do we want to put this? Now, we got our trek road container right here. Okay, that's a pretty good candidate. We have our trek bikes. Do we necessarily need that in a container to move it around? I would argue no. No, not really. Okay. I will argue that we need another container right here. Div class. Actually, let's leave road container alone. Let's add another container up here. Div. Actually, we can go ID. We can go ID here. ID. I'm just going to call this trek bikes container. This gives us the flexibility to add other brand if we want to later. Okay, we got trek road. And for the sake of time, I'm going to copy this. I'm just not going to change the content. So we're going to pretend that instead of this being trek road, this is going to be trek gravel. Okay. And then we're going to call this gravel bike 1 container. And then gravel bike 2 container. So one of the things that is kind of interesting about HTML is that you can have multiple IDs and you can address the first ID with, actually you can address all the IDs with CSS. Why this functionality is built in, I don't know, but when it comes to JavaScript, you're going to get the first ID. So having multiple IDs is considered bad practice, significantly so. All right. So with that out of the way, that's part of the reason why I'm changing the IDs. Is there any other IDs that we are repeating? It does not look like it. Okay, so we have a container here. Now, if I minimize these, it'll make it a little bit more obvious what I'm talking about. So we have trek container, then we have road container, and then we have gravel container. Okay. Now, for the sake of demonstration, I'm not going to add another class on these just because I want to show you something that I haven't went over yet in terms of stepping into items, because up to this point I haven't had to, so I need a manufacturer reason to do so. I am going to start with trek container. Okay. This one. I'm going to start here. This is an ID, so we need our pound sign or a hashtag. Okay, trek bike container. And now I need to step into whatever's inside of that to address those other containers. Now, I don't want this H2. I don't need to move it. Okay, I need this. Or, excuse me. We're starting from here, and we need to step into this container. Okay, so we can go into this div. okay, which probably what I'm going to do. Or we can address the IDs at this point as well. But if you're going to do that, you might as well just address the IDs from the beginning. So we're going to address this by the div now. So check containers and now div. Okay. And the reason why this is considered significantly better practice than just going divs all the way down is because you're starting at one point. It's a lot less to parse. So you're going start from here, go one down to a div. Every div that's inside of that little container there, which is only two, apply whatever style this is. Now, there is that. Before I get ahead of myself, and I did a little bit here, so I'm going to paste that again. Checkbox container. All right. We need to set that Flexbox. So display. And notice that we have a bunch of options here with visual code, which is always nice. Display flex. Okay. I should be good at this point. I might be wrong. I'd have to look it up. Okay, so now that we are addressing the divs, we're in the section where we're addressing the divs, we need to set width. So width, 50%. Okay, this is going to give us the ability to actually put these things on one row because right now there's not enough space over here to fit this. We're probably 150 pixels short of doing that naturally. Okay, so we're going to do this with a 50%. So no matter what the screen width is, we want both of these things to be on that one row. So I'm going to start there. Okay, now we got this. All right, why is that happening? Okay, I just got this and this. Okay, these are separate things. Full refresh. Okay, so things like this happen. It's not immediately obvious why. Is this image just repeating? Is that what's happening? Okay. Oh, okay. I see what's happening. All right. So this happens on occasion. Actually happens a lot. I'm lying to you. So let's make this a little bit bigger so you have an idea of what's going on. All right. So if I hover over Trek Road Container, notice that that is one column. Okay. If I come over here to that gravel container, which is over here, notice that that is one column. Also notice that those are 50%. Okay, so we're doing pretty good here. So what's going to end up happening is that this is going to be a road bike section. This is going to be a gravel section. Let's make that a little bit more obvious because we can change this. Okay, we're going to save that. Gravel section, road section, both of those are 50%. So this is doing exactly what we told it to. However, we are not addressing one of the primary fundamental properties of images. So image by default has a overflow of show. Okay, so anytime that you are overflowing a image of its container, right? Because this is about double, it's going to go, okay, yeah, I'm still going to show this. Now, there's two ways around it. You can go, all right, width, you need to force it to fit within its container. So we can go width of 100%. If you have a library like Bootstrap, that's going to be image fluid. We don't have Bootstrap at the moment, so let's go and address bike image. So that's right here. Width of 100%. Here we go. Now we got something going on here. All right. So we have our road bike section. We have our gravel section. Is this what we want? That is the question. All right. And this is part of the reason why I've been stressing up to this point that you need to understand the concepts and that you're trying to create something. There is no procedure because right now this works. This works. Is this what we want though? And the answer is going to be no. No, it's not. And the reason for that is because, okay, we have a gravel section here and we have a road bike section. That's fine. Well, what happens? Okay, let's close this now that we figured that out. Okay, what happens when we start doing things like this? Save. Okay, our gravel section is just significantly bigger than our road bike section. Are we just going to leave a bunch of dead space here? No, of course not. Why would you do that? That's stupid. Okay, so we need to find a way of being able to address each section appropriately. So instead of doing it like by columns like this, we need to do it by row. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and go back to normal with this. Okay, we got, there we go. So right now we have our check bikes container, and then we have our road container, and then gravel container. Okay, that's fine. The issue is that that's not what we want at all. Okay, so I'm going to leave check bike container. And now I am going to address this. Flex container. Okay, I'm going to head back to my, well, I'm going to save first, and then I'm going to head back to my CSS. I'm going to change this check bikes container, and I'm going to use a class for it. So class of flex container, like so. Okay. And then we're going to take this same flex container and inside of that flex container is our divs that we're trying to address. So let's go ahead and address those divs. Okay, which is still right there, still with a 50%. We are doing good. I'm going to save that. And now we got this. Dang it. I don't want that. That's stupid. Why is that happening? Well, that is happening for a couple of reasons. One, this is working as intended. This bit, working. This bit, working. This bit, it's doing exactly what we told it to do. And it's not what we want. So headers are not blocking elements. They are inline elements, which means that we need a way of addressing this header tag that allows for blocking styles. Okay, so we have a couple of problems here. First, and to be clear, I'm doing this intentionally, stepping through all these problems because it shows troubleshooting techniques. Okay, so we can add a div here. That's fine. And then we can add a div here. And this is going to get our blocking style elements that we are looking for, and we're going to save. And then it's going to do this. That's still not great. Okay, well, divs start on new lines. Why does this not start on a new line? Well, if we go back to our CSS here, we're saying, hey, flex container, div with a 50%. So if we come back over here, it's flex container, div, and div. So our CSS is doing exactly what we want over here, but we don't want to apply to this. So, okay, how do we do that? Well, we officially need to move away from div. Let's go ahead and use class now. Bike type container. Okay, so if I come back up over here, instead of a div, I'm going to use bike type container. We're going to save. And now I officially am in the ballpark of I don't know what's happening. So bike type container. Let's go ahead and save this. Save this. All right. Let's see what's going on. New tiny. Okay. Let's open that back up. Header to div. That's fine. Flex container. Check bikes container. Check road. Road. Gravel. Okay, so that is doing what I expected to do. Let's lower this. Okay, that is doing what I expected to do. All right, we got a div here. Okay. Font size. I'm not seeing any type of styles being applied over there, so that's definitely strange. Let's go up to the div. Still no styles being applied. Final size. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to refresh this just to make sure. Okay. That is not great. Okay, div, flex container. We're not on divs anymore. Bike type container width of 50%. Flex container, which is right here, is not going to address this. It should address this. Bike type container, width of 50%. Interesting. So this is a div within itself. So I wonder if flex container is the wrong flavor. Can we just, thank you. Flexbox. Invalid property value. Okay. All right. Let's go to Google. W3C Flexbox. Okay. Okay. Class flex container. That's fine. Okay. Let's go to try it yourself. Okay. Display of flex. Dodger blue. That's fine. Okay. Flex container. Stepping into a div. Margin, padding, font size. That is all fine. Okay, flex container, and then we got these three over here. Okay, I am noticing that the same thing is happening over here as it is on our project. So it seems like that flex has a built-in style to it where it only allows for the content size to be the width. So that is interesting, and I don't like that at all. Okay. So what I'm going to do to fix that is I'm going to do one of these. I am actually going to readdress div. Div, and then we're going to say, hey, width of 100%. Okay, so we got our div here. That didn't do what I thought it was going to do. Here's this width of 100%. That is fine. Same thing with this. This is still a div. Okay. And to be clear, guys, this is part of the reason why there's libraries out there like Bootstrap Grid in particular. Okay. So that's going to be 100% of the available width. So if I undo this, because we got a page division here. Okay, that's just not being addressed. Okay, so the other option that we can do here, because that didn't work. And to be clear, again, I'm leaving these mistakes in. One, you can be doing this for a while and you run into things like this. And then two, you have to be able to solve these problems. You have to be able to try a handful of things and go, oh, okay, yeah, well, that didn't work. So let's try something else. Okay, so what we're going to do here is instead of having this, okay, check row container, we're just going to get this H2 out of that container. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing down here. Okay, there's that. There's that. Okay, save. And now we have exactly what I was going for a while now. So we have road bikes here. We have a lot of padding. Why is that? Okay, header 3. Let's go ahead and remove that unnecessary padding. Okay, header is the same thing. Okay. How do we want to handle this? So we're already getting into the realm of duplicate styles and a little bit inefficient on the styles aspect. Yeah. So what I'm going to do here is I'll leave it for now. We'll be a little inefficient. So padding 0 and then readdress padding top. Do I just want padding top? Yeah, I think I want padding top. Let's go 3% here. 3%. Okay. We want both of these. So what ends up happening usually is that you end up fighting with the browser for default styles, which it helps occasionally that it's there, but I end up just, okay, yeah, 3% a lot. Okay, let's go down to 1%, 1%, 1%, save. That's a little better. Could be worse. Okay, H3. That should be significantly smaller. Okay, yeah, where is all that extra padding coming from? Font size, padding. Okay. Oh, it's margin. Okay. Not great. Margin 0. So as you guys can already see, and this is part of the reason why duplicate styles gets out of hand really fast, is because of this right here, where you're going through and saying, hey, I need this for everything. So you have a couple options here. You can go a single class, or you can readdress all the H tags, which not particularly awesome, but I would understand why you would do it at that point. Okay. Okay. So we got Madone, Indoma, and then Gravel. So we are doing pretty good here. And this is basically where I wanted to stop for Flexbox, because we got this. And for intro to web or intro to technology, I don't necessarily care about mobile responsive. This is responsive. It's basically there. We could go a little step farther, but don't need to. So this is what I'm expecting for intro to technology students. All right. All right, so that's going to do it for this little demonstration for Flexbox. Up next is CSS Grid if you want to join for that one. See you in that. All right, welcome back. We're going to be going over CSS Grid for this portion. If you are following along with the last one, either make a copy and delete your Flexbox styles, or just make a new file altogether. Because we're going to be doing something a little bit different to achieve something very similar to what we did last time with the Flexbox application here. So with that said, we are at the same spot as before. So trek bikes, road bikes, here are the names, and then I need to do the other portion of this as well. So let's start with that. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's get our extra content in here. Okay, trek road. Let's go with trek gravel again. Okay. Gravel 1 container. Gravel 2 container. And then gravel section. Okay. There's that. We got this. Here we go. Gravel section, extra bikes. We're doing pretty good here. All right. Now, one of the things that we ran into last time was this H tag was getting in the way with our containers. So, and we also made an extra container. So let's go ahead and do that as well. So we're going to go div here, ID, trek bike container, and then we are going to move both of these into that container, and then we are going to move that H2 above. Okay, like so. Let's give that a little space just to signify that it is its own thing. Here we go. All right, so we're doing pretty good. We are back to where we were before. I'm going to save that before I forget. I'm going to go back to my styles. Now, at this point, we are essentially set up the exact same way that we were before with the Flexbox. And I'm going to show you the difference between Flexbox and CSS Grid. So let's start with this. So we need that byte container. Okay, so hashtag or pound symbol, depending on who you're talking to. We still need display, and then we need grid. Okay, inside of this, we are going to set the rest of that grid. So we're going to go grid template columns. Okay, and then inside of this, we're going to go repeat 2, and then we want equal spacing 1FR. Okay, so we got that. The other thing that we're going to need here is grid template rows, and then we're just going to set this to auto. Okay, so there is that. And then next, actually, let's save this, see what we got. Don't save. I closed it. Save. Okay, so we got road bike, we have the bikes over here. So we got this problem again. Did I save it over here? We did it from trek bike container. Okay. Can I just put it in here then? Okay, yeah, we have that same problem from before. Okay, gonna move this up. So I have that container on the wrong thing. So I'm gonna add a class here, grid container. All right, I'm gonna put it here. And then I'm going to come up to, we'll leave that. I'm going to come up to this. We're going to call this grid container, like so. That, did I spell it correctly? Oh, it's a class. My fault. There we go. Okay, so we got grid container, grid, okay. Something's not working. So let's go ahead and inspect this. Let's go over here. I'm also noticing that my images are going outside of their containers. So let's go ahead and fix that as well. So let's come over here, width of 100%. There we go. Bang. All right, there's that, there's that. Okay, so we have this. Trek road container. Did I put on the wrong one? No, definitely the right one. Trek road container. Where are these classes? Okay, right here's grid container. Okay, I'm going to save this again. Again, the live server stuff, it's possible I didn't save it, but I'm pretty sure I did. Okay, that can go smaller. All right, so we have the same outcome as what we did with Flexbox. And just for good measure, I'm going to add some padding between these things. We're going to go grid. It's not area, it's not row. Is it space? Gap. Okay, yeah, it's gap. So gap something, row gap. I don't want row gap. This happens all the time. Okay, CSS grid gap. Grid gap. Okay. Gap. Let's go 20 pixels here. That is not working. Okay, yeah, it's just gap. Oh, gap, gap. Grid gap. Okay. Let's go 50 here, just see what happens. Seems to be working. Let's do that. Let's come up over here to where the grid gap is going to be. Byte container. I need this one, grid container. Okay, margin, blah, blah, blah. Okay, is this working? Yes, it is. Okay, so I'm going to reduce this to something reasonable, like, actually, I like 20 pixels. So let's go back to 20 pixels. Bang. There's that. Okay, reduce. Okay, so at this point, that is a little demonstration of CSS Grid. On the simple level, it's a lot easier. Yeah, I don't know what to say here. Flexbox and CSS Grid go together pretty well, but when you're learning the concepts here, and to be clear, this is intended to be overly simplistic. You guys need to practice these basics here. Okay, when we move on, when we start doing more project oriented things, you'll run into little quirks about how these things work. And at that point, come to me. I'll help you. I don't want you guys stuck on those type of things. Okay. And that's what the tutoring session is for if you're an first stage student from 5 to 7 on Tuesdays. All right. So with that said, that's all I got for CSS Grid here. And I will see you in the next one. It's the last one as well, and it's databases. See you then. Later.